Well, hello. I think it might just be Terry there at the moment, but quick sound check, make sure everything's working. In fact, I've just noticed something that isn't. I haven't turned on the video lights. But if the sound's working and you can see me waving, then please pop a little comment in the live chat for me so that I know we're good to go at past, and I'll see you then. Hello, good evening, and welcome to In Studio Live, the 70th edition. Wow. This is a catch-up session. We've got a few things that have got missed over recent weeks, so I'm going to spend this week just bringing everything up to date. And, well, let's just get on with it, shall we? If you are new, you're watching this for the first time, some basic information that I need to say at this point. If you find the show helpful, please subscribe. Don't necessarily do it now. Find out and make sure the show is helpful to you. I believe it will be. And if it is, please hit the subscribe button and the bell notification. Please hit like as well. And big appeal at the moment, although it doesn't say it on the screen over my shoulder, is I know you can't comment during the live stream, but if you're watching any of the other videos I put up there, please put some comments on there. I've been watching some videos recently about how YouTube effectively rewards creators and how it knows which videos to push and to get the message out. And one of the big things on there is the interaction. And now that's likes, it's shares. When I say share, if you use the share button within YouTube to share it, that tells YouTube a great deal of information. It says, hey, people are sharing this video, it must be good. Or you're sharing links to this live stream, it must be good. But it has to be done through the link within underneath the video in YouTube for that to work. But the other one that they put apparently a lot of weight on these days is the number of comments. So even if you've got nothing much to say, if you've watched one of the other videos, then just go and put a comment on there saying, yeah, I've watched this, I've enjoyed it, or I watched this, I found it helpful, and I can react to it, and it will really help the YouTube channel. And I'll be honest with you, I've said it in the past, but my goal with all of this is I need to get the channel monetized, and for that I've got to get up to 1,000 subscribers, and I'm not even at 500. I've got to get to 4,000 watch hours within the last 12 months, rolling 12 months, and I'm at 2,500. So I've got a long way to go yet. So this is why I keep mentioning it. So anyway, that's the thing. If you can do any of those things, that will really help me get the YouTube channel up. And now, of course, once I'm monetized and I've got a lot of subscribers and a lot of eyes on the channel, I can start approaching people for giveaways. I can't do it at now. I've got one coming up, but that's thanks to Gary who sorted that one out for me. But I need those sort of numbers before anyone will take any notice of me at all. Yeah, other thing, please join a Facebook group if you haven't done so already. Links down below. And the live stream is interactive. We've got this chat going on in the YouTube chat alongside here. So comment along. If you agree or disagree, put a comment in there. Again, that signals to YouTube that this is worth promoting. And I was looking at the stats this week, and the biggest issue I have is YouTube's not promoting it. Everything else is fine. It's just for some reason they don't want to promote me. And I think it's the lack of interaction that I get. So anything like that you can do, please do. Anyway, if you've got questions, put it in the chat. If you've got questions and you're watching the replay, put it in the comments. I do answer them all. I will use some of them as themes for future videos. Right, let's get going on the show anyway tonight. Tonight is a catch-up session, prompted after last week's Lightroom problems. And it was all down to Lightroom. I did solve what the problem was. in the end. The problem was Lightroom putting a dialog box underneath another window on a completely different screen. Now, as you probably realise, I've got 3 screens here in front of me. All you can see is the very corner of my main monitor. That's what I have Lightroom on when I'm doing the editing. I have chat on it at the moment on there. So I was editing on Lightroom there. Above it, I have my laptop, which has got OBS, which is broadcasting this. And here is my iPad. And the iPad is actually acting as a third monitor. It has my PowerPoint screens on there. And I also have an overlay window that shows me exactly what's going out. So I can see exactly what you're seeing on that screen. And I don't need, because that has the PowerPoint slides, I don't generally need that window to be the full size. And what happened was, when Lightroom came up with the dialog box, instead of putting it on top of the Lightroom screen that I was working on, it decided it was going to put it on the iPad. Now, I know it sometimes puts the window on other monitors, but when it has done that in the past, it's always been on the laptop screen. So I checked the laptop screen while I was doing it to make sure it wasn't underneath there, and it wasn't. It never occurred to me that it might have put it underneath the iPad screen. And that's where it was, and that's why I couldn't do anything. There was a dialog box open. And it was absolute. So I only realised once I closed down the screen. But effectively, it locked up, as you saw, all of Lightroom. So I couldn't review any images. I couldn't do the demos I was trying to do. So all of that I'm going to do tonight, plus a few things that that have come in this week as well. So that'll get me back up to date, clean slate, ready for next week. So that's what's going on tonight. So I'm looking at your images most of the evening, because that's what much of what's going on in there. Ones that have come in via email. I'm going to look at the before and after challenge and talk a little bit about that and how that's going. And of course the Facebook ones. And the panoramas. I'm going to look at your panoramas that you've done. I'm going to show and do that demo of how to stitch them in Lightroom. I'm also going to show you how to stitch them in Photoshop as well, which is a little bit more complicated than doing it in Lightroom on there. I was pondering on doing Affinity, but I'm not confident enough with that to be able to demo it yet. I've still got a way to go with learning Affinity on there. And I'm not setting a new before and after exercise this week. I was going to, but that then puts everything out of sync, because my theme for next week, that should have been this week, was all on lenses, and the exercise for the challenge is all to do with lenses. I really want the two to go together on that. So no new challenge on the before and after this week. Again, I'll talk a bit about that as we go on. And at the end, I will reveal this week's member photo of the week. So, right. Let's start by looking at panoramas and feedback. And I've put this particular panorama on the screen because somehow it got missed off the slides last week. And this was showing how sometimes when you merge a panorama, it doesn't always work. And you can understand why this one didn't. This is the Biodome in Montreal in Canada. If you've ever watched the Formula One from the Canadian Grand Prix, you'll see this big dome near the circuit with this, which is a basic framework. This was shot from inside it, and I did this full 360 degree, no, not quite 360, about 180 degree, maybe slightly more panorama. But the stitching software got really, really confused with it, and I ended up with this sort of weird, Escher-esque, I suppose, broken panorama. I'm a big fan of Escher, by the way, and his drawing. So I really like what it produced here. So I've kept it in the catalogue there. Why am I mentioning this now? You'll see as I start to review your panoramas. I had no images emailed to me this week, so I haven't. So the priority section is going to be on the panoramas. I say this every week. I'm going to say it again. If you've got images you want me to review, do email them to feedback@ians-studio.co.uk. The reason for that is I get so much more information about your image from those. I get a higher quality image, I get a larger image, so I can give you better feedback. I can look at the image, if you send me the full res one, whether you got your critical focus right. I can look at the settings and advise whether you were using the right settings. If I pull them off Facebook, I get low resolution, they've been compressed horribly by Facebook, and all the shooting data has been removed. So it's like trying to do a review with one hand tied behind my back. So really encourage you to send images to feedback@ians-studio.co.uk for the feedback sessions in there. Right, let's head over to Lightroom and have a look at some of your panoramas then. So here we are with the panoramas, and I'm going to start by just showing you this image. This is the crescent in Buxton, which was photographed by Gary Platt, and he asked a question about, this is a crescent, not a flat. How do we solve the problem of the fact that because you're moving the camera in an arc, it tends to flatten it out, as we saw last week? And I gave a bit of advice last week about sidestepping along to be able to do it and then stitching it together. And Gary had a go at that, and what he got was intriguing. When he tried stitching together, he got this kind of effect, which is very similar to the effect I was getting with my Montreal image, and lots of different ones, very sort of Escher-esque to it. I really quite like the effect that it's done. Now, this was done in Lightroom, and the Lightroom algorithm is particularly prone to this sort of thing. When I do the demo in Photoshop, I'm going to, so I don't know whether you're watching tonight, Gary, or whether you managed to catch this on the replay, but I'm going to point out a couple of settings in there which might help you stitch this together without this kind of effect happening. That one's nearest with it, but there are still some issues around this area, and particularly at the bottom down here with it. That it's still not perfect, but there are, I think you can get this to work, but I think there's a couple of extra steps that you might need to know about to achieve it. Really weird how it's sort of tried to find the bits to stitch together. I think it's also been hampered by the fact that the different windows are all the same as it goes around. So trying to find the overlap areas, it's had some trouble with that. But wow, yeah, that is weird. That is really weird, stitching that together like that. But I like it. Right, okay, so here, let me come into a different view. This is Astrid's panorama, which is a park one. I'm assuming the path was straight and the panorama has bent it round on there. So what can we say about this? Well, Astrid, I don't know whether you're watching this live or on the replay, but I think the biggest problem here is it's underexposed. Now, quite rightly, you've done the right thing. You've exposed for the highlights to make sure they're not overexposed with it. So that little bright area is right, but you just need one extra step after stitching together. And that, if I go into the develop module, I'll just move that so we can see. See, that's just slightly overexposed, but I've pulled this off Facebook, so that might be the problem there. Is we just need to do a couple of things. If I bring the exposure up on there to something a bit more reasonable, to what it should be, a little bit on the shadows with it, not too far. I can now afford to just bring that exposure back a bit, and then bring the highlights down so that that doesn't blow out as a result of it. And I think that is what you need to do with there. Just bring that up. And maybe just a touch of vibrance, that's probably a bit too far, and just possibly a touch of clarity, just a little bit on there to create that, and that would deal with that one for you, Astrid. Bob, this one. Thames Estuary, I presume, on there. It looks like it. The horizon's not quite straight. I don't know whether this was stitched or whether this was a crop pano. The horizon's not quite straight. So let's have a look at this. I'm going to go into crop mode just so that I can see what's going on with it. Because as change the overlay. That's O to adjust the overlay on there. And I want that one. Yeah, it's not quite, is it? So can I tilt that just to bring it back? And then, having done that, I can do that and that. Yeah, like there, I think is what we need on that one. With it, it's just a slight tweak to it. And again, as is often the case with panoramas, ends up being a little bit underexposed because you've been protecting the highlights. So maybe just a slight boost on there. Not much actually, only about a third of a stop. Maybe a little bit on the shadows, bring that up and bring those highlights down, try and bring those whites back under control, those highlights under control. Just something like that. And I think that would be it. Oh, we've got some plugged up blacks. I bet that's Facebook that's done that. I bet they weren't plugged up when you uploaded it on there. But yeah, nice shot. I like the balance of the wind turbine over on one side, and you've done well not to avoid having the join going through the wind turbine and ending up with the blades not at the what is it, 120 degrees on there because of it. So well done on that. Again, another nice one from Bob. Just again, those shadows just need bringing up on that, and highlights down just a little bit, and a bit of vibrance on there. And yeah, that's lovely. I really like that. It just gives a real feel of the expanse in front of the photographer. Actually, let me go full screen so you can see it. Not that full screen. Let's try that full screen. Yes, yeah, you can see it a bit better now. Sorry, I should have done that on the other one so you can see them better. So there you go. That was the previous, and that one you can get to see them a bit better. Now I've done that, or even better when I do that. So moving on, Trafalgar Square, yet another one by Bob, and again, same thing. We've got those plugged up blacks. I bet that's Facebook as much as anything on there with those. I'm just trying bringing the shadows up a bit. I'm going to take the overlay off, which is the J, and that looks good. I like that on there. and you've managed to avoid the distortion with it. I mean, there would be distortion on there, but it doesn't look distorted on there. It just gives this nice feel of the open space on it. So well done with that one as well, Bob. This one, again, underexposed, and I know this one was stitched together in Affinity, and Bob has corrected the distortion that was caused there, but as a result, we're underexposed. Bring the highlights back. Let's have a check of the clipping. That's fine. On there, a little bit of vibrance to it, I would say, on that. And that looks good. Now, those verticals are just going out very slightly, so a little bit of a transform on there. If I went auto, what would happen? Ooh, horrible. Let's go guided and get that right. The other thing I can see on this is chromatic aberration on there, and it's quite bad. If you look at that zoomed bit, you can see how bad that is. So doing that just corrects that issue, and not bad. A little bit of barrel distortion still in there on it. It's actually very difficult to try and solve these, but that we've not done too bad on there. So what else? Lens corrections. All right, I'm just going to zoom right in as much as I can on there, and let's just put a little bit of, it was the greens, wasn't it? I was seeing it on. Yeah, that's got rid of it on there, just on that edge. If I zoom in a little further on this, if it will let me. That's it. I go into something like that. Yeah, we can see that now. If I turn it on and off, that's without the lens correction. That's with it, and we can see how it's sorted out that colour fringing on here, and I can adjust the area. Oh, helps if it's switched up. No, it was switched on. I can adjust the area that it's finding on there. I can use this to actually even pick the colour I want it to deal with on there, pick the fringe colour. So that's done a lot. That expand that a little bit more, I think, on there, and a bit more on that. So back to fit on there. So now we've got a nice image with that. If anyone's wondering about what it was before, that was the distortion that Bob fixed. So done a good job with it, but it's just those extra little bits to it, Bob, that take it to the next stage. But really nice pano on there. I'm not going to go through corrections on here. I love the fact that you've got this one person walking all the way through as you've gone round and done the pano. Unfortunately, because you were concentrating so much on the person, you've managed to clip the tops of the buildings, which kind of spoils it a little bit on there. So I don't know whether that was deliberately set up with the person or not, but if it was, just think about next time you're there doing it again, but make sure you get the tops of the buildings in. And again, Buckingham Palace. Here's something Bob pointed out. This blurry area, which he thinks is due to a person moving between the two scenes, and therefore the way it's been stitched together. I'm not sure on that, Bob. It might be. And that was Gary's that we looked at. From John, I love this, John. This is absolutely stunning, this panorama. And the scene, there's no visible distortion in there. It just looks great, and I bet this would be fantastic blown up on a screen, on a panorama print. except you've missed one thing. We've got dust spots on there, so those are easy to fix, and we just get rid of them. But it's just worth keeping an eye for those sorts of things in the images as well. John, first time I've seen the panorama done from a drone. Like it, but it's underexposed, so let's fix that there so we can see it properly. But once that's brought up, the highlight's brought down to preserve that detail in there. Shadows up just a little bit, and I think that looks really nice. I like the distortion that's put in there of the beach. We're looking at, we're obviously between the two piers on there. I'd like to see a bit more blue there, and I can generate that with a little bit of dehaze. Easiest way to do it, and then a bit more shadows. Try and get a bit more detail in the tower on there, maybe the blacks up a little bit, and just a touch of vibrance with it. But that, it looks good. So going from that to that, John, will give you, as I've said several times with your images, don't forget the post-processing. Before you submit images to the group, get your processing right on there, and with that little bit of extra work, you've got a really nice panorama there, but it does need that extra work with it. And that's it for that. So let's get back to here. Let's have a look what's going on in chat whilst I've been talking. So Terry and Peter are going to make use of the extra time this week on the things. A couple of other people have now joined us. Various comments about the panoramas. Yeah, it's good. I'm so glad you've all had a go at this, and I really like the results that you've got with it, folks. So just well done, and thank you for having a go at it. It's great from my point of view, knowing that something I've been teaching, that people are putting that into practice and having a go with it all. So move on. Yeah, post-production tutorials. So let's go back. Well, let me carry on talking about a couple of things over there whilst I do. I'm trying to do three things at once here. And yep, and that. Right, yes. How do we create a panorama in Lightroom? This was the thing which went horribly wrong last week. Now, fingers crossed that this will work this week. Yeah. All right. So, head over to Lightroom. Here we go. So now, these are my images. You'll notice they're vertical images. To create a panorama in Lightroom, I select all of the images. I right-click on any one of them and just go Photo Merge Panorama. Now, I wonder where it's going to put the dialog box. You see, this week it's done it. It's put the dialog box where it's supposed to. It's put it on the right screen. Now, why, Lightroom, didn't you do that last week? Right, now you can see as I did that, it went away straight away to have a go at stitching together this panorama. And let me go through the options that you have available here. Within this dialog box, and I can make the dialog box a little bit bigger, and it's often worth doing that with panoramas so you can see whether the results are working. You've got three options up here. Spherical, which is basically your 360 degrees all the way up and down. cylindrical, where you've just gone around in a circle on one level, and perspective is, that's the other. Mine's gone blank on the perspective. Sorry, on there. Now, boundary warp is just sort of how much it bends the edges on the boundary on there. And you can see the difference that's making as I do it. And usually with these sort of things, if you go from 0 all the way up to full, we can see it's warped it enough to fill the screen on there. It's how much it bends it out to fill in those white bits. But of course, the other way, if you don't want to warp it and distort the image by doing that, which doesn't look too distorted to me, but if I said none, I could use this fill edges option, and it uses content aware fill technology, same as in Photoshop, to just fill in the gaps, which actually it does remarkably well on there. But sometimes you can see perhaps, oops, didn't mean to undo that. Down here, it's perhaps not quite as well with the fill of the edges on there. Actually, not too bad, actually, looking at it. Better than I thought. I've got to say, I'm impressed with the clouds up at the top in this corner with those fill edges on it to do that. And I can just go along, toggling on and off and see whether it's doing it well. Yeah, that's a bit odd there. So what I might do, just take that off for a moment and do a bit more on the boundary warp with it, so that when that fills in, it doesn't look quite so weird at this point. And it's worth doing that sort of thing as you go through, just to have a look at it and make sure you've got the best possible result. Now, there's a bit of distortion coming in there with it. On there. Now, auto settings on there, I just take those off. It's just about, that's auto develop settings. What this is going to produce is a DNG file, and it's just going to apply auto processing on there. So I'm going to say yes, because I can change it afterwards. Create stack. What that does is it does a stack within Lightroom, puts all the images in the stack and leaves the finished panorama on top. So once I'm happy with all of that, I can just hit merge. And you can see up at the top here, it's actually creating the panorama. And once that gets up to the end, we will find it in there. So at this point, whilst Lightroom's doing its thing, I need to just keep waffling until it finishes, because it's completely stopped at the moment. On there, I can click on that, as I really want to show you what happens once it comes out. And I chose JPEGs to do this with rather than DNGs to try and speed it up. But anyway, here we have it. So now, notice what it's done. It's created a DNG. So if I go into develop with this, it's got a whole lot of develop settings in there. That's the auto settings that got applied. So I can actually reset all of those. If I didn't like the processing that it's done, I can just go through and say, if I double click on tone, that resets all of them. And I can choose the ones that I want for it, or I could use its settings as the basis. So that, well, actually, I think I want to see a bit more within there, in the middle. Oh, I'll do a full screen for you. A bit more of the section in the middle, so I'll bring the shadows up so you can see that better. Highlights down on there. Vibrance, it's put up a little bit. I'll bring the clarity up a bit on there, and that would do. There's no way I could get away with without the sun in there, but that's how you do it anyway. That is how you create a panorama in Lightroom, and in a little while I'll show you how you do something similar in Photoshop. So back over to PowerPoint. Let's see what's been going on in there. So yeah, let's have a look at the chat. What's been going on in chat? Nothing. Okay, you've all gone asleep. So right, okay, let's move on then. The before and after challenge, let's talk about that. Excuse me a moment. As I said earlier, I'm not setting an exercise this week because I want to try and keep the exercises in line with my themes for the week within the live stream. And next week's all about lenses, and the exercise is going to be to do with lens settings. So one thing just to say this, a few of you have said in the live chat about how you're a little bit behind and you're pushed for time and things like that. If you get behind, don't panic about that. Just carry on at your own pace. And if you're a week behind everyone else, it really doesn't matter. And that means if you haven't even started this process yet, you can do. Go and have a look at the series of videos on the YouTube channel which talk this through, about what the challenge is all about, and the first 3 exercises which have been set up as part of this. And then just work your way through. And it may be that some weeks you can do a couple of the exercises, or maybe some weeks you won't do any. And do it at your own pace, and still put the images in the Facebook group and just say which exercise it is, and I'll still give the feedback as part of the live streams on there. And I've asked the question in chat, I've asked it before, and people are giving me a bit of feedback, saying that you are finding it helpful. Now, I thought people would, because I found that sort of exercise helpful with my photography. I've done it a number of times where you just find out what your camera and lens can do. So some of the things we've done, particularly the depth of field one, I noticed it would be good if you do it for each lens that you've got. And if you've got a zoom lens that you use, try it at maximum wide angle and maximum zoom as well, and see the difference there. What's important from that is that you, as you then look at those images, you understand what you get from your kit, so that when you're presented with a scene and you think, oh, I'd like to get this in focus and the background blown out, you can think back, oh yes, when I did that exercise, I thought I was going to get that, but I didn't with that focal length and those settings. I had to be at this focal length for it to work. Or I might have got it with that, but it wasn't quite as sharp as I thought I was going to get. And that's the thing I want you to get from it. So it's worth doing it with all your different lenses, so you can really understand what each lens gives you with your photography, so that when you have to make a decision quickly about what lens you're going to use, what settings you're going to use, you know exactly what your kit gives you. Because your kit will be different to my kit, and they will have their own characteristics. Even the same model camera body and the same lens, as the way you use them, the characteristics will be slightly different. You might have a different filter on the front which will affect things, and the way you work. So it's all about just getting your head around all that. Right, so let's have a look at the feedback at the challenges that have come in through the week. So so far we've had the before images. I haven't had any new ones of those. We've had challenge 1, which is all about composition. I've covered all those in feedback. So I've got challenge 2 and challenge 3 this week to talk about. Challenge 2 was all about freezing and blurring the action, and challenge 3 was all this business about aperture and depth of field and sharpness of lenses at different apertures. So again, let me head over to Lightroom and find the appropriate section on there. Here we go. And again, I'm going to go full screen on this and on here so that you can see them. Paul, right, this was the freeze and blurring, and we can see here that Paul's done that. I don't know what the settings were. I haven't got this to hand on there. I can't remember whether you posted them or not. But we've got the idea that really has frozen every single droplet on there, and we've got this blurring effect on here. I would say, Paul, with this, I wonder just how slow you could go, whether you could go even slower. It might be this was as slow as you could get with the lighting conditions. You might not have had an ND filter to be able to get even slower on there. But if you had, or slightly different condition, with the water, I think that water you could get it even blurrier on there, which would give a slightly different effect with it. But again, it's all about you understanding how to achieve it. Anne-Marie, I don't know whether you're watching, Anne-Marie, but I couldn't tag you in the Facebook group for some reason. Really nice image. Again, crisp individual droplets in there as the wave breaks over the rock. And then with these, we've got the blurriness of the water, and we can see individual droplets, how they've created arcs in the water. And I really like the way that's come out on there. It's a lovely sort of effect. The sparkling droplets have created these light trails within the image. Peter, right. Again, I don't know whether you could have gone slower with that on there, but you've clearly got the idea between the two, and those, just toggling between them, you can see the difference that has made. Oops, between the two settings. And again, don't have the actual settings that you use, because it's a Facebook image on there, but you've managed to create freeze the droplets, so that's all good. John with the flag, again, could you have gone slower with that? There's a lot of blurriness in it. I don't know, maybe that's the right amount for that particular subject. And that's all frozen. So yeah, clearly got the technique in there, but it's all about understanding how to do it. Terry, yes, nicely blurred with the traffic going under Stockport Viaduct with the pyramid, and then frozen on there. And then Terry hung around a little bit longer to get the night version, which is really blurred on there. Like that. I would say slightly underexposed on there, so I would just pull that up just a little bit and the shadows up just a fraction on there to make that work, and then just keep an eye on those highlights and maybe just pull them back. We can do that. So I would have ended up with something along those lines. There's something a bit weird about a couple of things. The white balance on it. Doesn't it need to be a bit more blue? Don't know. I'm just going to leave it as it is on there. Just I know. Touch over. Maybe it's oversaturated. Not sure. Doesn't need much. I think it's along those lines is what we need on there. I'm just going to do an experiment and just try setting the white balance from there. This is probably going to look horrible. It is going to look horrible because I can see it. I can see it on the small window. So no, I'm not even going to try on that. Yeah, nice shot. Nice shot. We do need to straighten that bridge though. You see, it's definitely not straight. So let's straighten that up. Now the lamppost is off, so what was that? On there, let's do this not in there but down in transform, and I'm just going to do it on guided to make sure we get this spot on across and down, and the lamppost there. Yeah, that's now all true on there, so that's all squared up properly on that. And a lovely image, Terry. Moving on, Robin, don't know whether you're watching tonight, but this was freezing the action with the shuttlecock, and definitely all frozen on there. Absolutely solid. A slight blur on the racket with it. The blurred version, I'd like to see perhaps a little bit more blur with it. Try with that for that, but yeah, you've got the idea of the motion in there on that one. Good. Now, Bob, you'd frozen the action in Trafalgar Square, and yes, we've got all the droplets frozen on there. Yeah, I haven't got the settings. Now, the next image was interesting. We've got these dark areas. Now, this is really weird. Bob was using a graduated, it was one of those variable neutral density filters, and he said he'd got no other filter on there with it, but that definitely looks like there is something going across the frame there. You can see it's almost a straight line. The darkening up there might be due to polarizing. My immediate thought with this is, mind you, that's very bright down here. It's almost as though the polarize, because the way these variable ones work, they're basically two polarizing filters, and as you hang on, you can't see me. I'm gesticulating madly with my hands. Let's go to here. The way it works, you've got effectively two polarizing filters, and you rotate them around. Of course, once they're at 90 degrees to each other, it cuts out most of the light, so that's when it's at its darkest. And it's almost as though those two polarizing filters aren't aligned properly. It's the only thing I can think of with it. I would do a few more tests on there. The other possibility with it is that if that's a very wide angle lens, as it might be looking at that, it's possible that that particular, those filters aren't designed for very wide angle. Even though it's the right size and right fit, it might be designed for something that's not quite 28mm, I would guess that looks like on there. Again, that could be the other cause for it. I'm a little bit grasping at straws on there. Difficult to know without actually seeing the thing. Terry's attempt at the depth of field on there. Really like this image actually, Terry, but you need your verticals sorting with it, because there's just something about it that made it look as though it ought to be tilted a little bit more round, just on there, and that works nicely. I love the little bit of out of focus foreground, out of focus background. Compare that with the other one, and there we can definitely see the tilt on this. So get your camera straight. And there we can see that. Again, they're both great images, but when you compare that with that one, I think it's no contest. I think this is the much stronger image on there. Robin's go at this. Again, hero flower down here, and we've got that's f8, and that's the biggest depth of field, smallest aperture on there. And look at the difference that that makes. And it's all about understanding that and getting a real feel for what your camera can produce. And time's moving on. Paul's attempt on this. We had a nice idea, the jukebox and the records behind. That first image is slightly soft. I don't know whether it's to do with the fact that it's a small image, whether it's to do with camera shake or what. Because looking at those, you've either knocked the tripod or you're hand holding it. But you can see the difference in the background with it on there, and one of them is sharper than the other. Check your shutter speed, make sure you've not got camera blur on there, but that's interesting shots on that. John, that's lovely and sharp on that one. Actually, let's go full screen. Not full screen. There. Tab. No. On that. Interestingly, you've got an underexposed image on that one. So this is one of the things when you're doing the exercises. This is confession time, folks. With this, I made a mistake when I was doing the video for it. In that when I went to my smallest aperture, I didn't notice that my shutter speed was so slow that I was shooting at something I shouldn't have been able to hand hold. And even with image stabilization, I didn't, and I got a blurry image, and I had to cheat because I'd got fortunately I'd done some test shots before I created the video, and I had to use one of those instead. I think you might have had that problem with here, but not with shutter speed, but with general exposure, which is strange. If you were in manual mode, maybe on there, because that's underexposed, that's slightly overexposed, and that's, oh, I don't know now. No, maybe that is correctly exposed on there. Let me go to developer and have a look. Yeah, no, that's correctly exposed with it, but the other isn't. You can see how that histogram changes, and even more so with that one. So something weird going on there, John. I would suggest have a look at that and try and understand why you ended up with an underexposed image as part of the sequence. Peter, nice shot. I love the out of focus background with it on these. And you've got the problem here that this middle one definitely isn't sharp, and I think that looks like camera blur to me on there with it. If I zoom in, you can see it on there, not sharp. But going to that one, it definitely is. That's the one that so go to the other, and that is sharp at the focus point. You've changed your focus point on it as well with that. So just watch where your focus is so that you're consistent when you do these. Focus on exactly the same point with it on there. But yeah, you can see here that how much more of that background you can see and how distracting it is compared to that, where the background just isn't distracting at all. And that's the lesson really from it. And yep, and that's that. So back to PowerPoint, back to chat. Oh, and it's disconnected my chat for you. So right, let's see whether I can get my chat back. Pop out chat, does that give it to me? Yes. Oh, don't you just love technology? Yeah, you've got the chat up on your window there. So, right. Not use the perspective option in Affinity. I don't know whether it exists in Affinity, to be honest, Bob, on there. Peter just saying, drag the corners. Yeah, you can do some of it that way. I don't know whether there's an equivalent to the Lightroom one in Affinity, but yeah, dragging the corners works on there. Right, yeah, I say try that with different lenses and just get your head round what's going on with all your things. This is absolutely weird. I've been just using Lightroom. While I've been using Lightroom, YouTube has signed me out, which is why I lost my chat. I don't know whether it's even going to let me. And it's got to verify who I am. Right. Oh. Wow. My subscriber count's just suddenly jumped up by the looks of it. Ah, no, it hasn't. Oh, it's even logged me in onto the wrong account. Why? To the control panel. Thank you. I hate technology at times when it just decides to do things like that. Right, anyway, back to PowerPoint. So moving on. Right, as ever, sponsorship is by you folks. I'm really grateful for those of you who have bought me a cuppa. I saw at least one come in while I've been talking, so thank you ever so much for that, to the person who purchased that. I know who you are. Thank you. And this week's cuppa was brought to me by Bernard Robinson. I don't know whether you're watching at the moment, Bernard, but if you are, cheers. Anybody else wants to support the live stream, if you do find it helpful and the stuff I'm doing, the link's down below, and it's just a couple of pounds, just a way of saying thank you, and helps cover the costs of producing this each week. So that's all it is. We've just been looking at chat, nothing new in there. So right, the other post-production tutorial, I'm almost out of time, folks. Again, let's have a look here in Photoshop. How do we do this trick in Photoshop? Well, you start by not opening a document. What you do is you start and create a new document through the scripts. And what you do is you go from scripts to load files into a stack. And you've got two options there, it's files or folder. Folder, you select a folder and it pulls in every image that's in there. Files just brings in the files that you select. So we can browse, and this is the folder with them in. And there, I'm going to use a different set of images this time, which is these. Again, just as I mentioned last week, these are all vertical to get the maximum resolution out of these panoramas. So I say all of those, I say OK, and I'm not, you can get it to automatically attempt to align the sources. I'm not going to do that because I want to show you the dialog box and show how you can take a little bit of the control over that. And I certainly don't want to create a smart object after loading the layers. So we just leave it like that and we say OK. And then Photoshop goes away, and this is where I need full screen. Down here, it brings in each image into its own layer on there. And if I hold Alt and click on the eyepiece, you can look at any one specific layer on there. So now we've got them all in as their own layers. It's a two-stage process to create a panorama. It's off the Edit menu. And the two stages are Auto Align layers and Auto Blend layers. Now, first time you go to it, you think, oh, hang on, they're greyed out. And if you see that, the reason is, over down here, you need to click on the topmost layer, move down, click on the bottommost layer, then when you go over, Edit, you can see Auto Align layers. Now, you might be tempted to go straight to blend. It doesn't work. You have to do align first. And you've got more options here in Lightroom than you had in Photoshop for doing this. And this is where, I don't know whether you're watching this, Gary, but I've used cylindrical because it's the same process as I had with the other one. For the ones that you got the Escher-esque images from with Buxton, what you might need is either collage, is probably the one that you'll want, or reposition to do it. Try collage first and see if that does better, and if not, try the reposition one with it, and that might line up a little bit better than the Lightroom stitching of the panorama. So I'm going to you can say auto and it will auto detect, hopefully, but cylindrical is the one I know it is, so I'm going to choose that. There's no reason not to select the vignette removal and the geometric distortion, and then just go OK. And it goes away and thinks about it. And so again, I've got to waffle at this point until, whoops. Yeah, I've got to waffle at this point until it finishes the process of aligning them, which is a little bit quicker than Lightroom manages to do it, but not by much. And you can see it goes through each layer, aligning, looking for overlaps and setting things up. And that's it. If I now do Alt 0, Control 0, it fits it all on the screen. I'll go back to full screen so you can see what's going on. That, all it's done is it's aligned, and you can see here, if I zoom in, window, navigator, if I zoom in, you can, ooh, not that much. We can see where the overlaps and the joins are on here, and we can see that the colours don't quite match, and some of the things don't quite match up on all this, particularly around here with shadows. And just have a look at all those weird things going on. Notice the people here as well in that. So it's not really done a brilliant job, or has it? Well, as I said, this is a two-stage process. So Control 0 to fit all onto the screen. Oops, and I managed to move the whole lot. Didn't intend to do that. Put that back into there. The second part, we've got to make sure all those layers are still selected. We go to Edit and then Auto Blend Layers, and this is where the magic takes place. Because now, having got those images aligned, it looks for the bits where the overlaps are perfect or best on there, and it seamlessly blends them. And it can fill in the gaps, as we saw with the Lightroom one on there, as well. So I'm going to say Panorama on there. The stack one is for focus stacking. We want Panorama, so we just say OK. And again, it goes off and does its thing. And actually doesn't take too long to do it on here, at least not on my machine anyway. And hopefully in a few seconds time, or am I going to have to waffle again? Yep, no, it's done it. Dum, 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 dum. Watch those shadows as it fills them in. You notice how it sorted that out, sorted the people out on here. We've now got a much better shot. And look at this. The area outside, that selected area, is the bit that it's done content aware fill on. And most of it's pretty good, except down in this corner with it and down here. So what I would do at this point is I go in with a crop, and I would decide how far in I want to go with it. And I want to try and get rid of that bad join there. So I'd come up to about there. I probably don't need all that sky for this on there. So I'd come down possibly to about there. And that would be my finished panorama done in Photoshop. And again, I just need to, oops, if I zoom right in, we can see this has done a pretty good job of stitching everything together. I can't see any obvious errors in that. Even around here where things were looking a bit dodgy with people, it's done a remarkable job joining all that up. So well done to Photoshop. So, right, we're running out of time, folks, because we've got Line of Duty starting in 25 minutes, and I want to be finished by then on that. So, back to here. So, right, feedback on your images in Facebook. So, this time, Lightroom and grid. Find the right images, Facebook. 32, I'm not going to be able to go through all 32. I'll have a go and go as quickly as I can through some of these, just to add some interesting points. Right, lovely shot from Sonia here of Tower Bridge. It was one of her attempts at night shots, slightly underexposed. If I go into the develop module with this, and just bring those shadows up a little bit, highlights down, a little bit more contrast to it. Shadows up. I think something along those lines. The white balance is a little weird on it. I think it just needs a touch warming on there. Something like that. So that would be a before and after, maybe a little bit more protecting of those highlights to come down and do that, those shadows a bit more. There we go, something like that. So before and after on there. Really good shot, done at the right time of day, Sonia, which I know was the intention on that. Mickey, nice shot. Little bit soft, I think, on this with it, but not disagreeably so. I would tighten the crop up a little bit just to keep the balance top and bottom, and I would tend to bring it in just a little bit on one side, just to bring it to something like that on there. Astrid, interesting idea. I don't think the focus was quite right within the ball though, so have another try at that. I like the idea that that was all out of focus, but this part, concentrate on focusing on this area with it to get that sharp on there. Nice with the flowers there, nice and sharp. and then looking down from above. And I like this idea of working the scene, and that's something I always encourage people to do. That was a little bit underexposed, but just a touch like that on there. A nice set of images there, Astrid. John, love this shot, but what I would say about it is this is one where you need a person there because you've got no idea of scale on it. It's one where you really could have done with somebody playing near it or walking by it just to give that idea of scale, that this sculpture on the beach, is it Cleveland's where it is on there? Because somebody commented, and I agree, it looked like a brooch on some material rather than this big sculpture on the beach on there. Nice shot. Nice sunset, rule of thirds in use, well done Peter. Donata, I know she doesn't watch the live streams, but this is a really good shot which I wanted to include. The lead-in line of the front there, absolutely spot on. The weight of the boat is on the third line with their horizon on the third line too. That we talked about last week. That I'm sure I've talked about before as well. This intentional camera movement, nice try with it. I think it's some form of tapestry. I'm not sure the subject worked for it because of these edges, but if we just try something with it, if we do that, and then bring the exposure, contrast up, texture and clarity up, I think that's starting to get something. But I think it needs a different subject for it to work. Or if you did with this one, a longer exposure so that the blurs are more indistinct on there with it. Great shot, Torolid. Really sharp. I like the fact that your hero flower is on the 1/3 line. Really well done. Cracking shot on those. Well done. Bit underexposed this one, Petra. Again, we need to protect the highlights, so I'm bringing those down first, then bring the exposure up and the shadows up. And this is one where a little bit of artificial warmth into it won't go amiss. So just bringing that up to bring back the golden light that I'm sure was there when you created the image. It might even benefit from, yes, you guessed it, a slight vignette, just very, very slightly on there, and a lot of feathering with it on that. Andy, nice shot. Little bit on the blue side for my liking. That's a personal thing. I know you've probably done it as a style thing, but I would tend to try and warm that up just a little bit, and maybe, oh no, I don't know, something along those lines. Difficult to tell with this one. No, don't want to go that far with it. Let's have a look, compare. Not sure. There's something about the colours that you've got on there, but whoops. If we reset that, if we did go with those, I think it just needs a little bit more on the exposure. Very, very slightly. Only 1/3 of a stop, but just that. Just a couple of options for you with that one, Andy. Love the colours on that, nice and warm, but is the horizon straight? Let's have a look. Not quite, almost, but not quite. There you go. Of course, your border isn't straight now, but you can't have everything on there. Nice one, Sonia, with it. Now, this I find distracting with it. I know it's probably what it's hunting, but I would have been tempted to do that on there, and then having done that, I would bring that down to something more along there. Ruskin, love this. This is absolutely action frozen, spot on with it. Brilliant shot, mate. I would just lighten it up a fraction. It was a touch underexposed, I thought, on there. But you've got absolutely everything bang on with that. But your horizon's crooked. So just keep an eye on that. Straighten that horizon up. And there we go. That's the shot. Again, similar sort of things I would do with this. I'd add a little bit more of the artificial in there, up, protect the highlights, and maybe a bit of contrast to it. You've got, is that dust on the lens there? Not sure. Lovely shot anyway. I'd try and avoid that horizon in the middle. I'm just trying to think which way around I would go. Yeah, possibly down to about there, something like that. Not sure on that. That one's worth experimenting with, Petra. I don't want to lose the duck. No, don't know on the crop on there. What else have we got? I love this one, Angelica. It's the oil droplets effect, but this was oil on a sauce or something, I think she said. So it was a dressing that she was creating food-wise. Love the texture to it, absolutely superb. Well done. Barry, this one, there was a whole bunch of images that you initially did. I think this was the strong. I like the composition. There's a symmetry about this that I quite like, but I'm not sure it's perfectly sharp on there. Check your focus on that with there, and just try and make sure that this is tack sharp. And think about your settings as well. I don't know what settings you were using, but I would go with something like F8 on this, and then choose a hero petal that you want in sharp focus. Now just slightly out. Also make sure you're on a tripod with it as well, because macro shots like this, it's so easy to get just a little bit of camera shake in there with it. Great moonshot again, Bob, on there. Astrid, nice framing with the trees. Barry, these fox images, really like them, but they're a little bit soft, or particularly this one is on there. I don't know whether that's because it's cropped in. I'm presuming it's from a crop that's caused that. That one's a bit underexposed, so think about your exposure. What I would recommend for you, Barry, is have a go at this before and after challenge that I'm doing. Go to the beginning of it. I know it means you're a couple of weeks behind. Don't let that worry you, and have a go at it, because you will learn a lot of techniques as you go through by having to find the right settings to do the exercises on there, and I'm sure that will help you on that. That's a lovely shot. It does need, though, the exposure sorting. It needs a bit more contrast. It needs a bit of clarity going in there. Not too much, actually. A little bit of vibrance on that. But it's a really, really nice shot of that fox. I think that's probably one of the best images you've submitted so far, Barry. So keep going and aim for shots like that. You've got the fox's face in focus. The background nicely out of focus, no distractions to it, so good shot. Mickey, nice shot. Like the concentration on the woodworker in there. It's just a little underexposed. Can you see here on the histogram, if I go full screen, the histogram, there's space there, so we can lighten that right up to something like that. Give it a little bit of contrast, a little bit of clarity to it, and I think that before and after is what you need on there. Great shot from Donata there. I just love the abstract nature of that and the colouring, the processing that she's done on there. So well done on that. Petra, absolutely tack sharp on these blossoms. Great. I like the way the white clouds work with the white blossom on this. So really nice shot. Nice straight vertical, Sonia. We've lost a little bit at the top of the tower there. Just like to see the flags or whatever it is at the top there entirely in the shot. Finally, thank you for submitting. It's been a while since I've seen a few from you. Nice shot. This just needs a little bit of adjustment. Now, I think it's a phone shot. Have a look for an app on your phone that will allow you to do these sorts of things. There's lots you can do with something like that. Open the shadows up, and can you see the difference that's made? That little bit of work with it from there to there, and you've got an absolutely cracking shot, just as a reminder of how good the blossoms were this year on there. Yeah, we were talking about something. I'm going to skip over that. Ruskin, another one here. This is the Holy Festival, Hindu festival of love, where lots of powder gets thrown, colourful powders. This is absolutely wonderful. Well done. The use of repetition in it, the use of colour in there. But as with quite a number of your shots, slightly underexposed. Again, look at that histogram there. We can afford to just bring that up, give a bit more don't want to give too much. Some of those reds are starting to blow out. Clarity, I think, is what we just need. A little bit of clarity on there, and that just helps that with it. And is that it? Have I gone through them all? I have. Wonderful on there. I am completely caught up on there. Right, yeah, we've got to the end there. So I'm just moving on. If you've got more images to submit, send them to feedback@iansstudio.co.uk. I'll give you the best feedback. Not much else going on in chat at the moment, other than talking about using Control key when setting the horizon on there. Yep, useful little tip on that. With that, and that leaves me to member photo of the week. So, drum roll, please. Yeah. Member photo of the week is this one from Barry. I chose Barry's fox on there. I just loved the shot. I did take the liberty, Barry, of doing that little bit of processing with it before I created the banner image, but I'll be putting that up as the new banner very shortly on there. So thank you for submitting it. Keep submitting. I know you're relatively new to photography, so keep putting your images up for feedback, and looking forward to seeing you improving over the coming weeks. At this early stage, I can see a lot of promise there in what you're doing, and I think you've got the makings of becoming a really good photographer. So thank you, well done on that. So whose image will be next week? Tune in and find out. So nothing else in the live chat on there. Next Sunday we will be looking at lenses. I forgot to change the thumbnail there. I edited it. I failed to change it in the PowerPoint. But yeah, next Sunday, 9th of May, for edition 71, we're going to look at lenses. Now, I have looked at these before on the live stream, but we've had such an influx of new people. I think this is worth going over again, particularly because it ties in with the challenge that's going on at the moment. So that will be next week's theme on there. So this week, kind of open as to what you want to submit. If you've got anything that shows anything specific to do with lenses, submit that to the group for feedback, but anything you want feedback on, send it to the email address, but keep uploading it as well to Facebook. And so, thank you for being part of the show tonight. Thank you for allowing me to talk about your images. And that's all I've got to say. So, until next time, folks, thanks for watching and keep making great images. And bye for now.